this is where the fun begins. We are going to start keying our background and putting our subject in our environment. So I'm gonna show you how to do this effect in After Effects natively, but I'm also gonna use some plugins that I think that you should get if you're really starting to invest in visual effects. So one, if you're just working in After Effects in general, you need FX Console. It's a free plugin by Video Copilot. It's absolutely amazing and it has changed my workflow significantly. So instead of going over here to the effects and presets, having to type in my plugin and then dragging and dropping it on top of my timeline, I can instead just hit Control Spacebar on my keyboard, and all of a sudden, wherever my mouse is, it will pop up and I could just type in the effect that I need and it instantly goes on to my asset. So it's really amazing and it just changes your workflow. Half of working in After Effects is just getting all the plugins and all the tools. So using things that make your workflow easier, it just helps you cut down on time and just helps in the exhaustion of animating in After Effects. Another plugin that I use is a subscription-based plugin. So if you are getting into visual effects a lot, I highly suggest you look into Red Giant's VFX Suite. It has such amazing tools that I'll be using in some of the lessons. But like I said, I will be using native After Effects plugins as well. So if you don't have that, you could still do this lesson. So first I'm gonna show you Keylight, Advanced Spill Suppressor, and Key Cleaner. Our goal is to be able to put our subject in our environment and really make it seem like our subject is supposed to be there. So I am going to go to the Me pre-comp and I'm going to go to my FX console and type in Keylight. So when you type in Keylight, there's a preset that is already native to After Effects. So together, Keylight, Key Cleaner, and Advanced Spill Suppressor all come together. So if you click on that, you'll see all the effects come in all at one time. So with Keylight, what you want is to grab this eyedropper tool and be able to grab a green that is consistent throughout the entire green screen. So I'm just gonna go ahead and grab this green right here. And so the green that you wanna grab is the green that kind of takes the most of the green screen, so it can grab most of the key. So the idea with key is that we are telling the computer to take out this color and to make it transparent. So with this, when I go and hit this transparency button, you could see what is transparent and what's not transparent. So I'm gonna go in and start to toggle this a little more. So a great way to be able to see what is transparent and what is not transparent is by going to this screen matte setting. So everything that is white is completely opaque and everything that is black is completely transparent. And all of this gray area, I want to turn black, and all of these light gray areas, I want to turn very white. So I'm gonna go over to the screen matte and I'm going to clip the black. So this is just going to make the blacks even more black. So I'm just gonna turn this up. And as you can see, it starts to affect a little bit of my white tones over here. So I'm going to alter it by clipping the white as well to increase the white that is in the scene. So I'm just gonna try to get this as close as possible without completely destroying these edges. So I'm gonna bump my resolution from quarter to full so I can get a rough idea of what that's gonna look like. And then I'm gonna change this back to intermediate result. Now we can see what is transparent and what is not. So there's a little bit of fall off right here. And obviously we have this very white tone here and we have a little bit of fall off here. So when you're shooting on green screen and you're using Keylight, especially when you don't have like a studio setup, these are very common issues that you're gonna run into. And I'm gonna show you ways to try to make this look a little better. So Key Cleaner is already on and it's trying to make sure that the spill that is left over from the green isn't as intense, but I'm also going to turn on this Advanced Spill Suppressor as well. So if you notice that this is turned off, and the reason for that is because you don't want that on when you have your eyedropper, because it's gonna start already turning the green to a normal tone. And when you have this Advanced Spill Suppressor on before you start grabbing your green, it's not gonna be an accurate color. So now that I have my key, I'm just going to turn this on and you can start to see that color change. This was like more of like a lime green hue, and now you could see it turns to a more like neutral color. So I'm gonna go to Screen Matte and kind of see where these lines are. See if I could try to bump that down a little bit. Now that I've got the majority of my key created, I'm just gonna throw back a little bit of that detail by rotoscoping back in my leg. The thing to keep in mind is if you want to start rotoscoping, you have to make sure that your key and any mask are off. I'm just gonna toggle these off before I start rotoscoping just so that it doesn't capture that information, because I don't want it to capture the fact that, you know, the shoe is gone. Like, I want it to be able to retain that information. So moving into rotoscoping, we are going to use the native After Effects rotoscope tool. I'm going to double click my footage and it's going to bring up a side panel. And in this panel, I can go ahead and select areas that I want to rotoscope. And for every frame, it will start to grasp on the next frame. The overall goal with this is to make sure that your subject is completely cut out and to try to avoid any spills that is left over from the green screen. If I'm trying to keep the detail in, I'm just going to color over it. But if I'm trying to cut it out, I'm going to hit Alt on our keyboard, and then this green button will now turn red. And if I cut that out, it will start to cut that out as well. When you're using the rotoscope brush, you don't really need to be super specific and draw the exact outline. It's pretty smart and kind of knows what the edges are based on the contrast of the video footage. So if you have very high contrast, it's going to be able to grab your subject a lot better. That's why it's super important to make sure that you're not wearing distracting patterns that is on your clothes, because having this high contrast just makes it easier for the computer to understand, oh, this is the subject that needs to get cut out. And shooting it on a green screen makes it significantly easier. And I don't need to grab all the detail that is in this frame. I just need to grab the stuff that is lost in the key. So I'm just gonna grab a little bit of this, maybe a little bit of the sock. And to be honest, I don't even need to worry about any of this stuff up here because I'm not concerned about that in the key. So I'm just gonna grab this part of the leg, and I'm just gonna hit space on my playback and it will start moving forward and mask it for me. So you could see that it's starting to rotoscope out those frames. So now that we have our rotoscope, we are gonna go back to our main footage, and you can see here that our leg looks perfect. Now that we're satisfied with our leg, let's freeze our rotoscope to make sure that it doesn't move anymore. So the rotoscope tool basically propagates each frame to try to figure out what's happening in the next frame so it knows what to cut out. So if you go without freezing it, it will continue to propagate as you start playing back. So don't worry about if the rotoscope grabs a bit of the green that is in the scene, because we're keying that out anyways. So just make sure that it grabs the majority of the details, because that's kind of what we want in the scene. So let's bring that footage back in and see what that looks like with the detail of the Keylight. So I'm gonna duplicate my footage. So now I have my rotoscope that is on top. I'm just gonna delete this, and then I'm gonna turn back on my key. So now you'll see that I have my original footage, which is my key, and then I have the rotoscope leg underneath. And so you can see the detail being pushed back into the leg that was lost in that key. So I'm gonna turn my resolution back down so that we can actually get a good playback. And now you can see the full transparency that is behind the leg. So now that we understand how to do this natively in After Effects, let's go into Primatte Keyer 6 by Red Giant VFX Suite and see how we can get this effect using that. So the reason why I want to show you the Primatte Keyer 6 is because that's something that I use, and I want you to understand my workflow and what is kind of used within the VFX artists that are creating stuff in After Effects. I'm gonna duplicate this main and I'm gonna change this to Primatte. And then I am going to take off the effects that we have. So we're not changing anything in our original composition. We duplicated the composition and now we're adding some different effects onto that. So I'm gonna open up the Primatte Keyer 6. I'm gonna go ahead and grab some of this color. So it's just gonna grab the pixels that are in the green. So instead of just grabbing one pixel like we did in Keylight, we'll be grabbing multiple pixels, and it kind of updates as we go. But the great thing about the Primatte Keyer 6 is that we can bring back some of that detail using this foreground tool. So we'll just go in and bring that, and it just pops right back in. So there is a little bit of a spill, but there's a lot of spill correction that is already in the plugin. So I'm going to put on the spill killer and enable that, and you'll see that a lot of that green just kind of disappeared. So I went ahead and refined both the Keylight and the Primatte Keyer 6 so that you could see a side-by-side comparison of what the results ended up. So this is Keylight with the advanced spill suppressor. So this did a pretty good job considering this is all native plugins. I think the biggest downfall for this is obviously some of the edges on the matte are a little harsh. We lost a little bit of detail, but it does the job. And if you don't want to buy the VFX suite, this is a great outlet. I think if you wanted to spend more time kind of refining some of these details, you totally can. And the rotoscope brush is a great way of bringing back some of those details. And then in this Primatte, we see very crisp, nice, beautiful edges. So there are significant differences when it comes to the two. I prefer the Primatte Keyer just because this key just looks really nice in comparison to what is native. But obviously this is subscription based, and this is for people who are trying to get into visual effects more. So I'm gonna go ahead and refine this using some of the tools that are already native in these plugins. And then in the next lesson, we are going to bring our environment to life. So adding some assets, tracking our footage into our environment, and making sure that it looks as perfect as possible.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our latest videos.